Hey guys, Pete here. Today we're going to talk about Dougie. Now this does have spoilers for episodes 3 and 4, so if you haven't seen those yet, you will want to come back and watch this after you see those 2 episodes. And while I was putting this together, I realized that it's going to be a 2-parter. In this part, we're going to talk about what we know about Dougie and his short lifespan on the show. And then I'm going to pose some questions that I'm thinking about, and I want to get some feedback from you guys. So, Dougie is a character that doesn't last very long on screen in episode 3. Let's look at what we learned about him in his short introduction, and then how his existence might be really important to the rest of the story. Dougie appears for us at the confluence of 2 events inside this same episode, right? We see Agent Cooper get transported out of the machine room, and we see Evil Coop, or Mr. C, whatever you like to call him. I like Evil Coop, and I will use that for consistency's sake, but I know a lot of people refer to him as Mr. C. We see him fighting off sickness after wrecking his car at exactly 2:53 p.m. We get a shot of a sign for Rancho Rosa Estates in what looks like Las Vegas. Rosa is the Spanish word for the color pink, so literal translation would be the Pink Ranch Estates. Rancho Rosa is also the production company Lynch and Frost created for Twin Peaks. Dougie's played by Kyle Maclachlan, obviously, but they added some padding to make him look heavy and what looks like a bad wig. So Dougie basically looks like an Agent Cooper who's let himself go. We assume that Dougie is most likely a real estate agent because when we meet him, he's with an escort inside an unoccupied house in Rancho Rosa that has a for sale sign outside. The escort Jade is naked and receiving her payment, even though Dougie is practically fully dressed besides his coat, and she's buttoning up his top button or whatever. And before she gets up to take a shower, she asks him what's wrong with his arm. He says he doesn't know, it fell asleep, and that it feels kinda tingly, something along those lines. And those turn out to be the only words he speaks outside of the red room. As he gets up from the bed, we see that his limp arm is wearing the green owl cave ring. After he puts his jacket on, he starts to get ill, and we get a cut scene to Evil Coop, who's going through the same thing, more or less. Dougie crawls through the house, fails to get Jade's attention, and then gets sick on the rug as we see the red curtain appear. He then disappears, and we realize all 3 of these Coop character sequences are happening at the same time. Evil Coop sees him appear in the red room, and Agent Cooper passes through the electrical outlet on the wall to switch places with Dougie. In the red room, when he appears, Dougie is confused as to where he is and what's going on. Mike is there, and he explains that someone manufactured Dougie for a purpose, and that seems to have been fulfilled. We then see Dougie's demise. His arm shrinks until the ring falls off, his head disappears, we see a gold orb, and then a gray mass that looks like it's trying to hold on to the orb before it disappears. And at the end, all that's left of Dougie is a physical golden sphere on the chair and the ring that's on the floor. Of course, the orb or the sphere came from him, and the ring is already been, it's already existed in the universe. In the timeline, we see that 2:53 passes and Evil Coop remains where he was out in the mountains or South Dakota. Agent Cooper, who is a lot worse for the wear, is now in Dougie's place inside the house in Las Vegas, and Dougie has been reduced to that golden pearl. That's the visual evidence that we have. That's all of what we saw. We can piece it together that they all happened at the same time because it's pretty straightforward other than being presented in a non-linear fashion. Mike helps us out by telling us Dougie has been manufactured and that he served his purpose, and that I don't think is very confusing. Pretty straightforward, really. Like, Evil Coop created Dougie as a decoy or replacement so that when he was supposed to switch back with the original Cooper at 2:53, remember the arm told Cooper and Mike about this number, which we realized is the time. When that all happened, Dougie would go back to the lodge, Agent Cooper would come out, but Evil Cooper would also be able to stay out in the real world. While this part of the story is easy enough to piece together, it brings up about 1,000 other questions. Primarily, if Dougie was manufactured, how long ago was he brought into existence? I mean, he has a job, a wife, a child, and a career. Not to mention that Jade and the guy that he runs into in the casino seem to have, they seem to already know him. They've known him from before. So going from there, this is what we'll explore in the second part of this video. I think Dougie's purpose was clear, but I could be wrong. Anything is possible, right? So first things first, let me know in the comments if we're on the same page as far as that goes. Then we have to think about the implications of Dougie's creation/existence, and these are the things that come to mind for me, so you can tell me your ideas about these or any other questions you might have or theories or anything else about what's actually going on here. Now, the initial thing that's a little bit of a wrinkle is that the Arm's doppelganger obviously was working against Mike and the Arm itself. They sent Cooper out, Agent Cooper out, and the Arm's doppelganger changed his course, for lack of any better explanation, right? So that's easy enough to explain away. The Arm's doppelganger would be working with Evil Cooper. The next thing that comes up is Jade. Jade is obviously hired by Dougie. She's a prostitute and he pays her for her services. What's really kind of out of place about Jade though is that even though when she comes back after hearing this really loud noise, she points out the fact that Dougie looks totally different and is wearing different clothes and that possibly he's sick, but she doesn't seem that bothered about it. And this also could be explained away in the sense that she's there to perform a service. She's done with that. Naturally, she just wants to get back to her life. I mean, I can't say that I understand how the mind of a sex worker operates, but in any job that I've ever had that is a contract or whatever, I want to complete it, get paid, and move on. So she may just not really want to get involved with Dougie any more than what she already has. The next people we see who are also hired to perform a service are the would-be assassins that are outside waiting when the actual Cooper in Dougie's place leaves with Jade, right? They seem to want to kill Dougie. We presume that he would, he must owe somebody money and that, they're ready to punch his clock or punch his ticket, right? But then after all of the casino stuff, we meet Dougie's wife and son. And they seem a little bit odd too. Dougie doesn't seem to be the brightest guy in the short things that we've heard him say, especially in the Red Room itself. He just sort of seems to be like, whoa, what's going on? And then disappears. But his wife is either super, super understanding and also just really caught up in her own life to not really pay that much attention, or there's a pattern here that is very similar to what Jade did. Yeah, there's something wrong, but she doesn't really want to be bothered with it. So that's definitely strange, right? And then we have this guy, Mr. Todd, who we know is located in Las Vegas, and he mentions, after giving a stack of cash to his assistant, tell her she has the job. Now you could connect some dots here maybe and say Mr. Todd was talking about the person who is portraying either Jade the escort or Dougie's wife. I don't think any of this stuff is clear, and I think that's what, I want to hear about from you guys. Something's off. We know that there's something off with Coop being basically brain dead, but still making his way around. And the casino scene I'm not going to get into real deeply here, but there is someone who analyzed the sound on Reddit and said that the sounds that the Giant plays for Cooper are slot machine sounds. So the Giant sends Cooper away. He ends up in a casino taking the place of this guy, Dougie, and then he gets hints as to how to make a bunch of money really quickly. So it seems like there's two forces at play here, right? Now, another thing I've seen mentioned, unrelated to any of that, was the bodies in Ruth Davenport's place. Are those somehow related to the creation or the manufacture of Dougie? That's certainly something to think about, but I don't know that there's any solid evidence except for that we know Evil Cooper was in some way involved with everything that went down in South Dakota. Another thing that pops up, and I thought about this today whenever I was re-looking at the Dougie disappearance scene in that gold orb. Someone had commented on my glass box video that there was a gold orb that we see before we see the monster in the box. So I went back and looked at that, and sure enough, there is. Now we see this gray mass, which is probably some sort of evil force that's put into Dougie by the man who created him, Evil Coop. We see that kind of try to hold on to that orb and then disappear. In the box, we see this monster. It looks like there's a gold orb floating above its hands, and then that disappears. And that would actually fit into the timeline that the thing in the box could be this gray thing that was inside Dougie. It's now been released and it went out through the box. So that's totally new. I don't know. I haven't seen anybody else talking about that, but that popped out to me whenever I thought about that comment that someone made about the gold orb. And then we have the machine room, which I'm going to make a separate video about. Or some people are calling that the mob zone. But yeah, the part at the beginning of this episode when we see Cooper get transported through the electricity back into the real world. And since I'm going to make another video, I'll just talk about it there. But obviously, there are parallels to the first machine that Coop sees and Evil Coop. And then, you know, things get switched up, and the second machine that he sees that he actually passes through is, in fact, taking him to replace Dougie. So, yeah, there's a lot of stuff related to this guy, Dougie, who only had a short run in the TV show itself, and I really want to hear you guys' thoughts. I'll be putting out part 2 of this later in the week before episode 5 comes out. I am also working on the part 4 recap and review, which will come out right after this at the same time that everyone gets to see episode 4. And then, like I said, I'll be doing a machine room thing where we look at that a little bit closer. So any questions, comments, or anything else, leave them on those videos or on this video. Check out my other videos if you haven't seen them. I did recaps for episode 1, episode 3, question and answer for episode 1 and 2, or parts 1 and 2, and we'll be following that up with Q&As for episode 3 and episode 4. So check back soon. Thanks for watching. I'll talk to you again.